the arc of my belief cycle and how it might relate to yin and yang theory. The old joke goes, we are the people our parents warned us about. Dear readers, I'm going to need an archetype for this story. How's about we take as the midline a middle-class British guy? Yes, I know it's lazy journalism, but this is the strata that I understand the best, as I'm a premium representative of it. How could I put myself in your shoes without making massive assumptions? The system sets up a young middle-class boy with worries of poverty at his heels and a golden future just beyond his fingertips. Few hit the goal, many hit the backstop. Age 7, I was a happy country child who wanted for nothing, was loved, well educated, and content with life. Age 14, I was discovering my strengths and weaknesses, my pleasures and my pains, my loves and my hatreds. At 21, I was already free in the world to try and make my way. By 28, I was beginning to settle down. From 35 to 42, it was a kind of midlife crisis of sorts. By 49, I was settled and happy, generally. I'm now in my late 50s and have hit my stride. I've discovered who I am, who I really am, what makes the world tick, and a huge amount about my fellow travellers that many will never discover. One overlay of Chinese medicine has it as 7-year cycles of change, another as 8 years, and a third as 7 or 8 years depending on one's sex. Take a little look at your own life in terms of these cycles. You'll see how it seems to mirror the changes in your own life, well, in most cases. It's widely understood in Chinese psychology and in other systems that from 0 to 7 years old we have no protective system for our emotions. This is why Norwegian children only really start school at 7 years old. The understanding is that children should be cosseted and reared carefully within a balanced family until their skin is thick enough to endure the slights of the outside world. From 7 to 14, roughly, most children have to figure out how to look after themselves physically in the outside world. In ancient China, martial arts training would commence at this age to teach a child respect, kindness, and careful, thoughtful application of power. Nobody should be trained to be a bully. Academic life streams in alongside from 7 years onwards, but to include the arts, not just numbers and science. How would you have a real, rounded understanding of cruelty and beauty if you only ever understood numbers? And so it went, following the evolution of a person. There's a second life overlay that we can offer here too. It suggests that yin and yang theory washes through our lives, that we follow a tide of ebb and flow, which makes us who we are. It's a slightly broader brushstroke. Rather than dealing with development cycles, it deals more with the phases of our emotional life. 0 to 20 is yang, 20 to 40 is yin, 40 to 60 yang again, 60 to 80 yin again. The system is called warrior, scholar, teacher, sage. You get it immediately, no doubt. In the first period of your life, you fight, crusade, and battle to protect what you believe in. Yang is hot and fiery and describes energy from inside bursting outwards, in aggression generally. From your 20s to 40s, you have much to learn. This is the university, or the university of life. It's learning how to become a parent, a householder, or even just a reliable partner. This is a yin phase of life where you turn the flow of information back inside yourself. You absorb the energy rather than firing it off at others. This phase sees you accept information from an external guide. From your 40s to your 60s, you've taken enough knocks to have built up lessons for others. You've seen the way the world works, formulated opinions, and are able to turn them back out to others in a productive, not aggressive way. The flow of energy is now outgoing again, in a yang flow. Finally, from one's 60s to 80s, it's time to turn back to one's self-cultivation. Draw the energy back inside and prepare the body and mind. It's always shown as a sage sitting in a cave up a mountain. This is not the self-absorption of the late teens. This is now a deep understanding of life and your relation to it. The things that I believed in as a young person are not the same things I now believe in. It's fascinating to see how the passage of life takes you to a place where you look back with wonder and find it extraordinary the things you like to say and do. There's the classic battle of freedom versus safety. As parents, we want to do nothing more than protect our lovely children. From my childhood to now, the world has become a much more complex place. People's sexuality is now more open, but this leads to abuse becoming more common. There are more drugs easily available to young people than there were in my day. Finding a bit of dope was a treacherous and difficult thing to do. These days I could have a stab at about 20 people who could hook me up. The City of London was awash with money, and so finding harder drugs was much more simple. The heady combination of alcohol and money meant that everybody had a drug dealer on speed dial. Music people love to think that they have a monopoly. Sadly not. Alcohol used to be found in boozers full of old men or off licenses. It was really pretty difficult to access alcohol as a young person. These days, every petrol station, supermarket, corner shop is brimming with cheap alcohol. Smoking is now vaping. There's a sanitized attitude that it's not so bad for you. The amount of children's flavours that one can now vape, it's astonishing. It's clear who they're aimed at. In the long list of addictions, we have possibly the most insidious of them all, is the addiction to work. At least if you drink and smoke, you know what you're facing at some level. The addiction to money fuels the addiction to work. You are selling your life for £9 an hour. You're giving somebody else your life energy for £9 an hour in an effort to what? Buy more vape? Buy more alcohol? Buy more ecstasy tablets? Buy more skunk? Buy a new car? Buy new clothes? What's your addiction feeding? As I said, we only want to protect our children. As a child, you're hardwired to decide at some stage that the values that your parents hold are not your values. Until the 50s, we were pretty happy to accept that we were just clones of our parents. Quite often, children would so admire their parents, they would set themselves up next door in exactly the same house, same job and same car. The Vietnam War, the Summer of Love, LSD, Madison Avenue, the Beatles and the Stones changed all of that. During the Second World War, we could still see good versus bad and felt it was right to fight for our countries. By the 60s, so much profit could be extracted from a war that people started to see that they were 100% disposable. Media and advertising were becoming much more accessible. From that era, tune in, turn on, and drop out became the idea for youth going forward. For the first time, the youth started to question the sanity of the older generations. The medium of television carried the word far and wide. A real revolution was being born. In my teens, I had decided that the guys in charge of the nuclear launch codes were not to be trusted anymore. How many people had they fed into their war machines? Would I be next? Would my world come to an end in a blinding flash? In my late 20s, I had an extraordinary moment. At 6 a.m. on a sunny summer Sunday morning, I woke to the sound of an air raid siren from the Second World War going off outside my house in South London. It was still understood that these would be used to warn us of a nuclear attack, still then ever present. I ran out onto the street to see other fearful-looking neighbours. My wife and children slumbered on. I thought about it for a few seconds. I went upstairs, kissed my son and daughter on the forehead, and climbed back into bed with my wife. I fully expected that to be the last moments of my life. It was just a faulty siren, as we all now know. I marched against nuclear power. I marched against the Gulf War. I supported the campaign for nuclear disarmament. Sadly, nothing changed. My father was a pacifist. He joined the Merchant Navy during the war so as not to be killing people. But I never heard him speak out against nuclear weapons. In my late 20s, Brixton was in flame. I believed that every life matters and supported Rock Against Racism. I lived in Brixton. It was the most fantastically mixed and open-minded community. When people were killed in police cells, I protested. I was always vocal when it came to police violence and race crimes. With a friend, we created Positive TV and made over 300 films that supported all sorts of alternative views on violence, hate crime, climate destruction, migrant injustice, sex bias. It just has to be accepted that we are a tabula rasa, or a blank slate, when we first arrive. We're given our family and community values to get us going. Some people lap this up. Others decide to question it. It's important to examine your own personal values. Try new things and see who you really are. In the debate, freedom versus safety, you always choose freedom. As life goes by, you stuff yourself with addictions. You work too hard and just can't see it. You eat too much. Your body doesn't react just yet. You develop a love of fine wine until it's 5 or 6 or 7 bottles a week. You move from toxic relationship to toxic relationship without even seeing this as an addiction to fill the massive hole you feel in your heart. You prostitute yourself for money, and more money, just to buy yourself some different shit that'll make your life better for a little while. New jobs, new loves, new cars, new houses, and still there's that hole. There comes a stage in some people's lives where they ask, "Why, Lord? Why?" There comes a stage in other people's lives where they accelerate past this turning, ignoring the signs, ignoring the warnings, until they hit the wall of illness and death full on. For some people, it's just easier to hit the accelerator and not look at the wall ahead. It's less painless. Often it's not. As I say, we only want to protect our children. Now the freedom versus safety debate starts to swing round. You see how fragile your life actually is, and all you crave is safety. Please God, just give me a few more years to see my children grow up before you give me cancer. I promise I'll cut back my addictions. Suddenly, you're aware that all your parents ever wanted for you was the best life they could offer you. And now you are that person. Worse than that, in trying to protect your children, you've now become hated by them. They believe, as you did, that parents can never understand what they're going through. The baffling human experience is so complex to navigate. Perhaps evolution has set children against adults for all time to thin and strengthen the race. Adults send children to wars. Children come back from war broken and send their children to war. It cycles round. In classic literature, children kill their parents all the time and are then done in themselves by their own horrible children. I'm glad that cycle still seems to be dissolving. It's still a kind of gangster or mafia pattern, though. It still seems fair to say that children who rebel will have children who rebel. Our lives are governed by change. As a parent, one can only hope for a moment when one's own children finally understand. You know my remedy for all of this. It's a footnote to everything I write. Examine yourself with exercises such as Who am I? Mental hygiene is seriously important. Look after your health with exercises like Qigong. Addictions suddenly drop away with no explanation except that one's body loves being looked after. Meditate. It's how your body heals itself and regains power. Eat well. Your body needs every chance it can get to heal. Sleep long. No matter what it takes. Give up coffee. Give up electric screens in bed. Give up bad news stories. Give up Swedish crime thrillers. Whatever it takes. Sleep. Be part of a community. It's shown that outsiders become extremists. Left to one's own devices, it's easy to talk yourself into believing all sorts of rubbish that a community can neutralise. Lead a healthy, loving relationship and sex life. Respect money. Don't fight for it or worship it. Remember, your money is a direct reflection of your life energy. List your addictions, find their roots, and destroy them. Forgive your parents and your childhood however you can, but just do it. Above all, love yourself, love others, love, love, love.